almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we were just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, NORMLAudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back to the Audio Stash. Today it's Tuesday, July 31st. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us at NORML to help end marijuana prohibition in America. Legalization won't happen without your support. So make sure you make a donation or join NORML today at NORML.org. Tomorrow on the Audio Stash, we're going to have a very important program. We're going to feature Paul Armentano, NORML's senior policy analyst, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, author of Understanding Marijuana, A New Look at the Scientific Evidence, and also Maya Salavitz from Stats at George Mason University. We're going to dissect the reefer madness myth that has been circulating for a little over a week now. It came from the UK. There was a meta-analysis done by scientists that was reported on in the Lancet Journal that a lot of media have latched onto and really misunderstood in many ways. Now, we all know that there's no direct link between marijuana and psychosis because about 6,000 Americans every single day try marijuana for the first time. And at least 97 million Americans have tried marijuana at least once in their lifetime. But this study from the UK would say that a lot of people were going to have psychosis problems from marijuana. That just isn't true. If so many people were trying marijuana every day and so many people were smoking marijuana once in their lifetime, we would have seen an exponential spike in the cases of psychosis. But the truth is, the amount of people who have serious mental health disorders, including psychosis, has remained just about the same over generations. So again, tomorrow, Maya from Stats at George Mason University, Paul Armentano, NORML Senior Policy Analyst, and Dr. Mitch Earlywine from the State University of New York and author of Understanding Marijuana will join us to dissect this reefer madness myth and find out why so many reporters just got it so wrong in the coverage of this Lancet report. That's tomorrow right here on your first source for real marijuana-related information, NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Today on the program, we have a wonderful presentation from NORML Board of Directors member and attorney Jeffrey Steinborn. Mr. Steinborn graduated from Yale Law School, and he's been in practice in Seattle as a criminal defense attorney. He gave the following presentation at the NORML Aspen Legal Seminars last month. And this is a really fascinating presentation from a criminal defense attorney talking about how to litigate a common marijuana case. Mr. Steinborn doesn't pull any punches in this presentation, and he is addressing a group of fellow attorneys at the Aspen Legal Seminar. So here's Mr. Steinborn's talk at the Aspen Legal Seminars. If you're a criminal defense attorney, consider attending one of the 2 annual NORML Legal Seminars. There's one in Key West and one in Aspen every single year. There's still room at the Key West Legal Seminar. We have links to join up at normalaudiostash.com. And folks, one more reminder about that Austin event down in Texas. Tickets are flying out the door right now, so make sure to book yours online today. We have links to the Austin Freedom Fest with Willie Nelson, Asleep at the Wheel, Carolyn Wonderland, Jackie the Joke Man Martlin, emceed by NORML Advisory Board member and former Dallas Cowboy Mark Stepnoski. Those tickets are available online right now, but they're going fast, so make sure if you want to go to the Austin Freedom Fest, you get your tickets today. Again, links to that at normalaudiostash.com. Now let's all go up to the high altitude of the beautiful mountains in Aspen, Colorado, and listen to this talk from attorney Jeffrey Steinborn.
Let me introduce then Jeffrey Steinborn. He's coming to us from Seattle, Washington, and criminal defense attorney there, obviously, at a recent important case, Washington versus Thine, which stopped the boilerplate warrant situation that I think we just heard a bit about. Yeah, he runs potbus.com, which is interesting because I tried to go to it with my new great computer that has Windows Vista. And I got there and it said, this site may harm your computer. And this little window popped up. It did. And so I clicked on it and nothing's happened yet, but I figure if I get like a $40,000 credit card bill to Mount Hood Harley Davidson, I know where to go. Anyway, most importantly, Jeffrey was the winner of the Al Horn Award last year in 2006. So let me introduce Jeff Steinborn.
Good afternoon, fellow cannabis counselors, cannabis consumers, and cannabis activists. It's welcome to Aspen. On behalf of NORML, I'm on NORML's board, and I'm really pleased to see you all here. This is the first time that the NORML National Legal Committee has mixed a seminar and had other activists who aren't lawyers come, and I think it's going to be good for us. Nice to see you all here. I like to say that we are confronting the legacy of Nixon, the most disgraced president in my lifetime, and if you look on NORML's webpage, you'll see that on there right now is a discussion of the Schaefer Report, which Nixon commissioned about 35 years ago now. Very impressive people on this commission, sort of a blue-chip silk stocking kind of commission. They were specifically ordered to come out with a finding that marijuana was harmful, and they were threatened that if they didn't, there'd be trouble, but nevertheless, they came out with the finding that marijuana is what we all know it is, something that should not be against the law, and they recommended it be legalized or decriminalized. Well, Nixon, of course, buried that report, and we still live with his legacy. Today, there are roughly 800,000 people who get arrested every year for marijuana, and most of them, something like 80%, are just cannabis consumers. And that's what we do at the NORML Legal Committee, is we represent those people. We're also activists. That's the activist part of NORML, but the Legal Committee is really dedicated to fighting the battles in the trenches when folks get busted, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today, kind of the things that we do as lawyers, and not rather than as activists, as lawyers in the courtroom and out of the courtroom, because a lot of my work is out of the courtroom, to try to help those 800,000 people every year who are our constituents here at NORML. I think we as cannabis counselors know that pot cases are different than the other cases that we do. Most of us do all kinds of crimes, the serious violent crimes, the terrorism crimes, but pot cases are different for a number of reasons. I mean, the main reason to me is that, generally speaking, we have the moral high ground when we go to court. We've got somebody who really hasn't done anything wrong. And a lot of times we got really good people who are productive citizens with families and jobs. They're amateur criminals, and for them, contact with the criminal justice system, becoming a customer of the criminal justice system, I suggest is even more devastating than for those who are, as a lifestyle, a part of the criminal milieu, get caught up in it or whatever, and they're used to these things. Because for people who are normal pot smokers, normal pot users, it can be an economic death sentence. It can be devastating. You can lose your job. You can lose your house. You cannot get car insurance. You cannot get a mortgage. If you're in a custody battle, you can lose your children. A simple 2-bit fucking marijuana bust for something that most of us did last night can ruin your life. And I see it every day in my office because I represent these poor people who are getting busted for 2-bit crimes, and I see their lives coming apart. I go through a box of Kleenex every week practically. And I use this to some extent, and when I'm negotiating and working these cases, I use these terrible consequences. How many of you know what MRSA is? MRSA is a disease that's epidemic in this country. It's a skin disease, a skin infection. It's not the flesh-eating bacteria, but it's right next to it. It's epidemic in hospitals where they know how to handle it, and it's epidemic in prisons where they know how to handle it too. If you're in prison and you get MRSA, I think of Paris Hilton. She had a rash. They let her out. When my clients get this goddamn rash, which is eating holes in their arms and legs, they put them in the hole. They isolate them with other people who are sitting there with oozing wounds. And when the lawyers call up and try to get some medical attention for these people, at least my experience has been, about the second or third time you call to talk to someone, you get the permanent hold. I mean permanent. You can sit for 60 minutes on hold and no one's going to talk to you. You're just done. This is what happens when you send somebody to prison. And if you haven't seen it, none of you knew what MRSA was. I ask judges now when I go to sentencing, do you know what MRSA is? I ask probation officers. Most of them don't know what it is. Nor have most of them read this very recent study that came out about 6 months ago called Confronting Confinement. If you haven't read it, go to the internet, Google Confronting Confinement, and read it. You get a better idea of just what it is that's happening to your clients when they get sent to jail. We're going to hear more from Tony Serra, I think, who's just been there. But to me, one of the most important things we have to think about is just how serious it is when somebody goes to jail. And if they're going to jail for marijuana, isn't it really out of proportion? It's something I work with when I'm trying to negotiate cases. Another reason why pot cases are different is that there's no victim. There's no victim except for your client. What does that mean? That means that there's no victim or no victim's rights advocate ragging on the prosecutor to get to put this son of a bitch in prison, to get him prosecuted. There's no one pushing at all to put your client in jail ordinarily. And so one of the things that means, you could lose some ethics points for listening to me, but one of the things that means is that the older a case gets, the better it is for you, because while that case is aging, on that same prosecutor's desk there are files piling up where there are some serious crimes and where there are some victims demanding attention. And if you can keep from pissing the prosecutor off or getting him pissed off at your client, sometimes when there's nowhere else to go, just aging a case will get you a better result, because when it gets old, there's more important stuff for the prosecutor to do. And to me, this is one of the ways where pot cases are different than other kinds of cases. I think we all know that these... Oh, pardon me, let me look at my notes some more here. Another thing that I wonder if people realize is that when you get this on your record, now in most states, in my state, although not under the feds, you get a pot conviction that can be expunged 2 years for a misdemeanor, 5 years for a felony. You can take it out, or 6 years for a felony. You can take it off your record and say, under Washington law at least, I've never been convicted of a crime. That's all dandy, and it was really dandy until about 5, 6, 7 years ago when the private databases began to harvest all this information. And now there's no such thing as expungement or vacation of a record. Once you are convicted of a crime, it's there for everybody to see who's smart enough to get in the internet and look up your damn name. All your employees, all your employers, you want to coach Little League, you want to be a teacher, all this stuff is available to anybody, hanging there forever over your head. So again, the consequences of arrest for our clients can be catastrophic, even though it's a pretty minor crime. It's something that I try to remember all the time when I use it in negotiating with prosecutors. Another reason why these cases are different is that, in my experience at least, and I come to these seminars and I hear the great jury trial lawyers telling me how to try cases, I just don't see very many jury issues in my marijuana cases. The typical case, the client's sitting at home watering the plants and the door comes down, or he's sitting in his car smoking a joint when he gets pulled over by a cop, or he's putting the pot in the hands of an informant. And these cases can be tried in desperation, but they are in desperation. If you're going to win them, I believe, for the most part, you got to win them at suppression, and when suppression fails is when I turn to diplomacy. And I think you just got to keep in mind that we do have the moral high ground. It's a big advantage. And I was listening to Marge earlier about juries becoming distrustful of the government, and this is the best news I've heard. I remember, and Dennis was around then, in 1970, I believe it was, we picked a jury in what they called the Seattle 7 case. It was a bunch of young people who had protested the war in Vietnam. And they were pretty articulate people, and they drove the government crazy enough to indict them all, as it was a great big deal, and that's all a story in itself. But we put together, I was a very young lawyer, we put together some brilliant lawyers. And the judge gave us extreme latitude, and the judge asked virtually every question we wanted to have asked of that jury. And we managed to find ourselves 12 jurors and 4 alternates in 1970, not a one of whom had an opinion about the war in Vietnam. Well, I gather from what Marge says that maybe juries are getting more distrustful of the government, and it's something I hadn't really factored in, but if that's the case, this is something else that really works to our advantage, because if they're distrustful of the government about anything, they sure as hell should be distrustful about the marijuana issue. So it's, again, this is a card we play, something we keep in mind when we're negotiating, talking to probation officers, prosecutors, cops, and judges. I mean, you can't open the debate about marijuana should be legal. No one wants to hear it, but we do have the moral high ground, and I really think we ought to exploit it. Pot cases are also good because they make good appellate law. These chicken shit judges on the Court of Appeals, and the brave ones too, if there are some, find it a hell of a lot easier to overturn a conviction if you're turning loose a pot person than a meth person or a murderer or a rapist or, internet porn or something like that, where we also get the search issues. So pot cases really make good appellate law. And I guess the other thing you can say is every now and then you even actually get paid for one of these pot cases, and it makes it kind of worthwhile.
Not in trade.
Not in trade. Okay, just a quick talk about the general tendencies and what I'm seeing in pot busts these days. I do a lot of misdemeanors, so I see a lot of pot misdemeanors, and they all come from what I would say is breaking the fundamental rule. Rule number 1. One law at a time. You only break one law at a time. If you're breaking the drug laws, you goddamn well better be obeying every single traffic law. You don't want to be making too much at home to have them think you're having a DV incident in your home so they can come kick your door down. You got to be squeaky clean. Your license plate's got to be clean enough to read. Your lights got to work. You can't speed. You can't even change lanes without signaling. And you better not touch the white line. Okay, but one law at a time, and people who break that, they get to meet me or some of you folks out there. That's the number one reason why I meet our customers, is breaking that rule. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of, the comeback of, is the watching of the grow shops. They started watching grow shops again. And in Seattle, they had a grow shop run by Vietnamese people that was servicing all the Vietnamese. And they're all recent immigrants, and none of them remembered Green Merchant or any of the assaults on the grow shops from the past. And they really thought they were onto something. Well, they put a bug. The feds got an authorized bug and put it in the grow shop along with a camera. And they sat there for about 6 months, and they brought down about 24 major grow houses, all run by Vietnamese, and of course all operated by people at the very lowest level of the educational and social spectrum in that Vietnamese community, who thought what they were doing was just like any other job, and if they get caught at it, there'd be no serious consequences. When you go to the gulag, the detention center, and you tell them, well, you had 1,000 plants, you're looking at 10 years in prison unless you rat out your brother, your sister, your mother, your cousin, everybody you know, and those guys up in Canada who want to kill you. 10 years, take your pick. They don't know that stuff. They wouldn't be doing it. They're just ignorant immigrants who have no idea what they're getting into. Anyhow, I'm digressing. I don't know if you're seeing that in your communities, but I do see new assaults on the grow shops. I also see, I don't know if I'm talking about this or not, but the the highway stops, ever since Caballes and Wren. Wren says you can do a pretext stop. Caballes says, reaffirms that a dog sniff is not a search, and that any vehicle lawfully detained for any other reason can be sniffed. I'll talk about dogs a bit further down the road, but these are the things that I'm seeing as sort of, and also pressure on the medical all across the country. In California, there's pressure on the medical clinics, and in Washington, there's a lot of pressure. I really have this feeling in my gut that there's an investigation going on in Washington involving wiretaps or bugs or something. It's been too quiet, and I think we're going to see something. Anyhow, that's the other place where there's a lot of pressure on marijuana. You know, it's remarkable. In these times of terrorism and meth, what I find is the government thinks nothing of sending 24 agents, several helicopters and vehicles and all kinds of equipment across the goddamn state to buy a pound of marijuana. They'll do it, really. I see it all the time. So anyhow, that's what's happening. That, and we're also seeing these investigations where they used to give you 3 or 4 volumes of paperwork to look at. Now they're giving you a bunch of discs they've scanned in such a way that you got to hire a techie to scan them right so you can read the goddamn things. But my last pot case, I got 24 discs, I think. So they're becoming much more complicated. They're treating them like organized crime, and you got to learn how to do that stuff. So technology is important. You got to learn how to deal with the technology. All right. This part of my talk is called Some General Themes and Silver Bullets. Over the years, really from my very first case, decorum in the courtroom is something I like to talk about, okay? And that goes for your lawyers and clients. Now, today, you see I got my lawsuit on, all right? I really wanted to wear my jeans, but I got my lawsuit. Okay, nice shirt. If you look, you can... Steve knows the story. I had to buy a shirt yesterday because the shirt I brought looked like shit. To buy a shirt in this town costs more than what I paid for this suit. You can buy a lawsuit, at Macy's, the standard pinstripe lawyer's suit. You can buy them at Macy's for about $200 2 or 3 times a year. They don't cost anything. And I got a whole lot of them. One of the problems with having a whole lot of suits that look alike is every now and then you do what I did this morning, which is I got a suit and pants that don't match. But you guys can't tell. You don't care. Anyhow, I see when you're trying cases to juries, every lawyer's got his own style. Some lawyers have their clothes specially made to look like they sleep in them. For juries, and I think that's okay. Whatever works, whatever your style is to talk to juries, but most of my work is not jury work, and I'm dealing with judges, prosecutors, cops, clients, other lawyers, and I feel like as a drug lawyer, I really have to look squeaky clean. I try to look like a civil lawyer. I don't even wear the colored shirts that are popular nowadays. I wear a white shirt and a dark suit, and whether I don't know if it helps or not, but my clients like it. They like it a lot. And it makes you look professional. Of course, you got to back it up by reading the goddamn advance sheets and being prepared and, and being good to your clients and professional. But I think that part of decorum makes a difference. Also, decorum for your clients. And this really makes me nuts. I sit in courtrooms and I see these lawyers let their clients come in with their pants down so low that I'm ready to pay them just to tell me, how are you keeping those pants from falling down? I want to know. Or they come in with the classic, the T-shirts that look like shit. And in your face, and so many lawyers let their clients come in with a sign that says, "Loser, incarcerate me, fuck me." It's true. So I tell my clients, when you go to court, before you go to court, you go down to the Value Village or the Goodwill, you spend $20. Get a pair of leather shoes, a pair of slacks, a white shirt, and a necktie, okay? Period. No coat. I want you to go to court looking like you've never worn a necktie before, but you put this outfit on because you are scared shitless and you want to show the court your respect for the court. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and you know what? I really believe it makes a difference. As much as anything else we do to start our clients off with a little lecture on decorum in the courtroom, so I think it's really important. Okay, briefs. Briefs. You guys took a break before this talk, didn't you? And went outside. Briefs. I used to write these briefs, for a suppression motion in state superior court. I'd write briefs that were 30, 40 pages long, It'll be the 27th draft before I handed the goddamn thing in, and I was so proud of it. And it took a while to realize that I was simply, in warrantless search cases in particular, which is what we get a lot of, I was simply writing the script for the cops and educating the prosecutor on what the goddamn law was. So I've stopped doing that. And since I stopped, my results are so much better. I write a brief that's a couple pages long. I recite the facts as the state has recited them ordinarily, or I even put them down to a paragraph. You know, my client was pulled over on the road on such and such a date by this officer. He was seized and searched. They found a pound of pot. End of facts. Argument. The state bears the burden to prove that this arrest and seizure fits into one of the narrowly drawn, jealously guarded exceptions to the warrant requirement. We respectfully await the state's proof. Period. No cases, no brief. The brief is in my briefcase already because I've done the research. I know what the goddamn law is. I'm just not going to tell them. Oh, thank you, Alan. Thank you. You read my mind. I'm not going to tell them. I make them figure it out for themselves. And I want to tell you, it's really effective. They don't have a clue what they're doing. So many of these prosecutors are shooting blanks. You catch them off guard all the time. It's one of the best things I've ever done. And I do it. I never write a real brief. But what I do afterwards, and I'm going to get to that at the end because I'm going to talk about the Navage case at the end of my talk here, which is one of the good ones. Anyhow, some more silver bullets. State v. Thine. That's a Washington case. You don't need citations anymore, right? You're all online. You can go to the database, look for Washington cases, find THEIN or whatever you're looking for. I didn't bring citations. State v. Thine was a case where I challenged the federal rule that says if you are a dope dealer anywhere on the planet, there's probable cause to search your house because dope dealers keep evidence of their criminal nature in their homes. The feds accept that. It makes no sense to us. We don't like it. So in Washington, I brought it up in a case in the mid-'90s. I got to the state Supreme Court in 1999, and they were waiting for it. They liked it. They ruled that you have to have more than just the fact that the guy's a dope dealer. There's got to be a real nexus between the crime and the evidence and the place to be searched. And it's literally stopped, well, not completely, but mostly stopped all those boilerplate warrants in the state of Washington. And what I found was that our Supreme Court was dying to rule on this issue. When I brought it to them, they picked it up and ran with it. And I'm thinking maybe in your states the same thing may be possible because I haven't seen a lot of stuff in the advance sheets on this issue. But the Thine decision is pretty good, and I commend it to you. When you get that issue, it's a nice little, I guess you can't call it a silver bullet, but it's a great appeal issue, and if you haven't done it, try it. One of my favorite little silver bullets, which may or may not apply, is a case called State v. Casto, C-A-S-T-O, in Washington. Most of us have come across the search warrant affidavit where it says, my informant is reliable because he made 2 controlled buys in which he provided dope. End of story. And based on that low-life scumbag's word, they go search my client's house. In Washington, there's a case called Casto, and it's based on stuff out of Lefebvre. They didn't just pull it out of their ears. And it says this: just because some schmuck goes and makes a controlled buy doesn't make him reliable. The affidavit has to recite that the schmuck first said, I can go buy dope from Jeff Steinborn. And then he went and proved he was telling the truth by going and doing it. And if they don't put it in there, the warrant's not good. And I just won a case in Pierce County in Tacoma with a 1-page brief. I walked 4 guys out, and I left a bunch of lawyers standing with their mouths open because they didn't know about the case. It felt so good, you know. It feels so good. I mean, it's almost as good as sex, but it lasts a lot longer, you know. So, anyhow, State v. Casto. Another silver bullet. Probation officers are everybody's worst nightmare. When my clients get sentenced, I tell them, look, I want you to go meet your probation officer. And I've been doing this for about 30 years now. Meet your probation officer, he or she. You look them in the eye, you shake their hand, you say, my lawyer, Jeff Steinborn, told me my job is to be your best customer. You tell me what that means and I will be your best customer. And I explain to my clients that for the most part, the customers of these probation officers are defiant little shitheads with serious drug problems who will not cooperate. My pot clients aren't like that. You know, they can cooperate. They can do the right thing. They can get through probation, but there's nothing like opening that first door with your asshole probation officer by saying, look, I'm going to be your best customer. Tell me what it means. That really works, and I commend it to all of you. Drug tests. I just have one piece of advice on drug tests, and it's worked for me in most of the cases. When you get a client who comes up dirty on a drug test, and it results in their incarceration because it's a violation of a bond condition or a violation of probation or something like that, and your client wants to fight about it, you demand what they call the litigation package. Now, the drug testers know what that is. The prosecutor doesn't. It's actually quite a thick package. I learned this from Dr. Woodford, one of our chemical experts. But you demand the litigation package, and 9 times out of 10, not only will you not get the package, but they will simply go away. And that's the remarkable experience I've had. Rather than confront you over this and fuck with your client, they'll drop the whole issue and let your client go. The litigation package, it's very often a silver bullet when your client is just fucked on a bad drug test. Well, it's all the data that the lab has got to put together about their testing procedures, including their chemicals, their standards, and since I've never actually received it, I can't tell you exactly what's in it. But I guess it's pretty complicated stuff. Dennis, I want to talk a minute about medical marijuana. I hope I can do this without making any enemies. California's having some pretty good experiences. Washington's having some terrible experiences. But first, let me say that I've been working with patients in medical marijuana since it first came along, and there is, among the consumers of cannabis, there is no group that is more moving or more motivated nor more deserving. But my personal opinion is that the medical movement is only part of our movement, and that until we legalize it for everyone, there's always going to be a problem.
That was NORML Board of Directors member and criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Steinborn presenting at the Aspen Legal Seminar just last month. More presentations from the Aspen Legal Seminar are available on the NORML Events podcast. We have links to that right up on our website today at normalaudiostash.com. Listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. Podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redapphid.com.